money and power in our modern world. We're going to look closely at the cold, clinical mechanics of corporate accounting, specifically the final, crucial piece of the cash flow statement puzzle. We are stepping right into the boardroom to see the underlying machinery that moves billions of dollars, usually while the rest of the world isn't even looking. Okay, let's just dive right into this. Picture this. A company announces a huge round of layoffs. Hundreds of workers lose their livelihoods on a random Tuesday morning. It's devastating. But then, by Friday of that exact same week, the board of directors votes to send a massive $300 million out the door as dividends to their shareholders. Same company, same exact week. One group loses absolutely everything, and the other group gets a massive check. This cognitive dissonance, this is exactly where the rules of money completely stop making sense to the average person. But once you understand the actual mechanics at play, it starts to look incredibly calculated. To really understand how this happens, we're going to do a forensic deconstruction of this whole financial machine. We'll be covering the cash flow paradox, debt and the growth illusion, stock issuance and dilution, the insulation mechanism, and finally, how to read the redacted reality. Section 1, the cash flow paradox, running deficits, funding investors. Let's strip away the emotion of that Tuesday morning layoff for a second and just look purely at the data. Here's the crazy paradox. A company can actually be losing money from its core operations, running literal deficits, and still be handing out billions of dollars to its investors. It's not a glitch, and it's certainly not illegal. It's literally just how the accounting game was designed. It's all tracked under financing activities. If you've been following along with us, you know operating activities track money from the core business, investing activities track money spent on growth. But this third section, this is where the real power sits. It purely tracks money raised through issuing stock, money borrowed through debt, and money paid out to owners. That's the whole shebang, just 3 levers: raising debt, issuing stock, and paying dividends or buybacks. But these 3 simple moves, they are exactly how corporate executives at the top of the food chain stay completely insulated from the chaos they might be creating below them in the actual business. Section 2, debt and the growth illusion, inflows and liabilities. Let's put on our investigator hats for a second and scrutinize that first lever, debt, because we really need to ask what borrowing actually means for the underlying health of a corporation. Imagine you run a company. Business is slow, investors are getting nervous. So what do? You go to the bank or the bond market and you borrow $500 million. Now, on your cash flow statement under financing activities, that $500 million shows up as a positive number, a massive cash inflow. On paper, the company looks incredibly flush with cash. The stock price might even jump up. But here's the glaring discrepancy. That money isn't earnings. It's a liability. It is just debt. And somebody eventually has to pay it back. But historically, the executives who authorize this massive borrowing are long gone, taking their performance bonuses with them by the time those bills actually come due. Let's look at a real-world pattern to see this in action. Between 2015 and 2018, General Electric was borrowing billions, literally billions of dollars, and simultaneously, they were paying out massive dividends to shareholders. But look at the timeline here. 2016, factory closures and layoffs. 2017, pension cuts for the workers. And in 2018, executives received record compensation packages. The paradox of executive rewards perfectly mirroring worker punishments is just staggering. And the wildest part is the cash flow statement showed all of this happening in real time if you knew where to look. Section 3, stock issuance and dilution, the weaponization of equity. So this brings us to the second lever of financing activities. When a company sells new shares, it receives cash, right? And that looks like a really nice positive inflow. Sounds great for the company. But let's take a hard look at what it actually does to the people holding the stock. Every single new share that is issued instantly dilutes the value of every existing share. If you own a hard-earned 1% stake in a company and they decide to just double the share count overnight to raise cash, well, your slice of the pie is instantly halved to 0.5%. Just like that, your stake gets cut in half. But here's the stark, uncomfortable reality. The people in the boardroom who actually authorize that dilution, they rarely, if ever, feel the pain of it. Why? Because their compensation packages are systematically built from the ground up to protect them. They've got stock options, warrants, and adjustable bonus structures. When they flood the market with new shares, the dilution heavily hits the average retail investor, while the executives remain totally, beautifully insulated. Section 4, the insulation mechanism, dividends and buybacks. Now we move to the final lever, which is money going out. And let's look at the institutional psychology behind this. Dividends are cash outflows, meaning money is leaving the company. So I really want you to think about this logically. If a company is actively struggling, losing money on its operations day in and day out, why on earth would they keep paying dividends to their shareholders? The answer is rooted entirely in human behavior and market psychology, because stopping those payments sends a massive signal of panic to the market. It literally screams, hey, we're in trouble. Executives whose own wealth and jobs are tied entirely to the stock price simply cannot afford for that stock price to drop, so they keep the dividends flowing. In fact, companies will literally borrow money, adding even more to their debt, specifically just to maintain these dividend payments and protect their own wealth. And stock buybacks are the exact same insulation mechanism. Think of it like a loop. Step 1, the company uses cash to buy back its own shares from the open market. Step 2, this directly reduces the overall share count. Step 3, because there are fewer shares available, the remaining shares magically become more valuable. And step 4, the stock price stays elevated, which means executive compensation looks absolutely fantastic on paper. Both dividends and buybacks are financing outflows that disproportionately and systematically enrich those who already hold the wealth. Section 5, reading the redacted reality, the final verdict. Let's pull all of these perspectives together, the macro view, the raw data, and the human psychology, to see the true, highly calculated purpose behind this financial document. So, the absolute crucial point is this. The financing activities section isn't just an innocent record of transactions. It is a highly calibrated machine used entirely for corporate image management. A corporation is going to borrow money when it needs to look solvent. It's going to issue stock when it needs to look ambitious and flushed with cash. And it will pay out massive dividends and buybacks when it needs to look generous to its investors. Which brings us right back to the absolutely staggering math we started with, a $300 million cash outflow. Massive, unapologetic amounts of money leaving the company and going straight into the pockets of investors, often completely divorced from how the actual business is performing on the ground. Because while that $300 million is flowing out the door to shareholders, the workers at the very bottom of the org chart, they see absolutely none of that calculus. This is what they see. Budget optimizations, hiring freezes, a 3% reduction in pension contributions. The internal corporate language completely masks the reality. They don't see the financial engineering happening above them. They just see their livelihoods being reduced to a rounding error. And you know what the wildest part of all this is? None of it is a secret. It's not some illegal backdoor deal. The cash flow statement doesn't hide a single thing. Every single one of these financial moves is fully disclosed for the public to see. But it's written in a language, thick accounting jargon, that most people were simply never taught to read. And as you can probably guess by now, that is definitely not an accident. So you now understand the full cash flow statement, and more importantly, you understand the system of power it describes. You see exactly how the levers of debt, stock issuance, and buybacks are pulled to perfectly protect those at the top. The rules of money only seem like magic until you learn the trick. So the only question left to ask is this. Now that you actually understand the system, will you remain a passive participant in it?